Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the Board of Supervisors to order. May I have a roll call, please?
You sure can. Supervisor Jomi.
Here.
Supervisor White. Here. Supervisor Horton. Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We're now on to agenda item number 3, which is our invocation. Pastor Haskins, will you please give us a beautiful prayer this
Let's
morning?
pray. Loving Heavenly Father, on this day, the National Day of Prayer, we're reminded of how important prayer and seeking your direction was in the founding of our country through the great movements of the abolitionist movement, the civil rights movement, and beyond. We are constantly in need of your wisdom, Lord. And I pray today, even in this small room, that you would be with our mayor and supervisors and grant them the wisdom to apply the knowledge and the information that they have wisely on behalf of all the people who make Carson City their home. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate that. If you'll stay standing, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Sue, you're going to have first testimony. Would you like the honor of leading the pledge? Sure. I like to just, it's good to. Yes, I do. Well, you're special for sure, both. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sure it was on your bucket list, right? Thank you. Okay, we're now on to our first agenda item for public comment, of which Sue has signed up to do opening public comment. See, that's what you get for putting your signature on something. That's right.
First, I would like to thank Parks and Rec. They've been working on maintenance items down around Longview Park. My old dog and I wander down there occasionally, and I appreciate attention to maintenance. I was brought up to believe I couldn't have new toys if I didn't take care of what I already had. So that's good. I also appreciate the board doing away with 1710. And I want to let you all know that publicly. I think it was a bad, maybe not idea, it didn't work out well. I want to talk about the remaining parcels that are left under 1710, Anderson West. We have seen a plat for the north parcel. 1710 requires 2 parcels to be involved. We have never seen any plat for the southern parcel. I don't understand the rationale for using 1710 on these 2 pieces of property. There is no oddly zoned lots. There's no infill involved. The southern parcel, in fact, is closer to downtown and government offices. Also allows students to walk through their neighborhood and spend very little time on large streets to get to school. I think the master plan was well thought out, well designed, and should be upheld. I also would urge members of the board to spend a few minutes and drive down Mountain Street. Stop and look at the 2 houses currently basically constructed on Anderson East. Envision them as 2 stories, 12 abreast, 10 feet apart, marching through any residential neighborhood in Carson City. They are inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Do I have anyone else for starting public comment or beginning?
Thank you.
Mr. French?
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada, Mayor and Supervisors. I've had the opportunity to look over the master plan and I'm very pleased. I'm very tickled that they have such hopeful vision, and I'm looking to be part of maintaining and helping support that vision to protect, preserve the natural resources, cultural resources, scientific beauty, scientists, beauty, conservation, values of property, while balancing the needs and the growth and the changes in population by providing higher quality recreational opportunities for a variety of uses. I've had the good fortune of having experienced more of Prison Hill than I was able to because of some issues I'm dealing with physically. But I had to have a guide for that, and I had to have a companion with me. But I did my solo trip up just recently, and I was pleased to see that it's very well utilized. But I am concerned about a specific area, and that is the West Basin. The West Basin, to me, after having gone up with my binoculars, I wasn't ready with my magnifying glasses I would have liked. I have mentioned this. Supervisor White my concerns, and we had a nice talk, and I feel much more settled on the resolve of the board to be protective and a good steward of the area. And so the deal is that I want to be part of that too. I'd like my vote to go in on thank you for the efforts. I want to encourage everybody that can to get out on foot and actually see that area, especially the areas of, have opportunity to be out there and to be personally, physically there because it has such an amazing sense to it. I haven't gone on very many places that have touched me quite the same way. Its balance of electronic or magnetism or minerals really touched me and gave me a sense of some comfort, which right now I look for. And the deal is, for me, there's another matter that I have besides wanting perhaps to even close down an area, certain parts of it, for some rehab for it. It's been a very wet year. I also would like to ask the board to consider changing the consent agenda material to read, any member of the board may request to any member of the board and public can request changes or considerations towards the consent agenda. I've mentioned it before, and I would like it to come to consideration because and sometimes I'm going, this is not what I would consider everyday business. And I think it deserves more consideration and more discussion to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just so you know, if anybody ever places a consent item on the agenda, I pull it. So the public has always had that right. So thank you.
Could you,
I just said if any member of the public places a consent item and wishes to speak, we pull it.
oh,
So
I didn't understand that
that's
process.
the purpose of the sign-in sheet, is to let me know that you want to comment on something.
I
and
didn't
you
know
do.
that included the
Yeah,
consent.
It's got the agenda item listed that
Yes,
you can
but-
tell us, so.
Okay.
Just to let you
We'll-
know,
we'll
if ever you have something.
get that clear.
Please do. Please do. So I don't have anyone else signed up for public comment, but I'll do in general. Is there anyone else that didn't have an opportunity to sign in? Okay. Good morning.
My name is Ron Moe.
You have to get that. Thank you so much. Green is go.
All right, thank you. My name is Ron Moe. I'm a citizen of Carson City, and I go up Prison Hill quite often. It's my cardio. Anyway, concerning the OHV area, the whole idea with the transfer from the BLM to Carson City, and then we going to seek out how to make the area, quote, sustainable. That's used a lot. I mean, it'll work. longer period of time. Well, it just started off wrong. Mark Hillesheim, the director of the project from National OHV Conservation Commission, he notified OHV groups as far as Sacramento, got and promoted it. The use of the OHV area has been substantially more used. And this was all before there were designated trails, before there was the Avenza map, where to go. So big problem, they go all over like it's open area. Big problem. Anyway, some of the things that have been done are good. They've got the porta potties out there and blocked a few things off, but they've expanded open areas. The enforcement there is nil. How is somebody going to see somebody going off designated trails and areas? It can't be. Anyway, the erosion out there has been huge. And I'm sure there's talk, I mean, I see catch basins catching some of the erosion, but it's obvious if you drive out to the staging area anyway, on Golden Eagle Lane, you can see the erosion that's coming through the little state land area. The erosion is from up higher. And as far as the vision, what whoever trails or whatever says they're going to do, it all sounds good. But to see it happen, who knows? The erosion is so bad. Things should be, if this is to go on, the area should be closed and show some rehabilitation. And as far as pictures, it's hard to see the areas. It should be from above with a drone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other opening public comment? Come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Dave Bentel. Some of you have heard of me. I have already, and I thank you for the opportunity to give public comment. I have submitted my comments. They are going to be provided in the minutes. So I'm just going to summarize in terms of brevity. Okay. My biggest issue is the inability of the city to recognize the fact that they have a responsibility to clean some of the sediment that gets eroded off the hill. And they never have. The other issue is the culvert and the drainage plan that was not developed before the work started on the ramp or the work started on the staging area. And I filed a compliance complaint. Okay, 2 of them, in fact, for those. And they still haven't been totally addressed. So my point in terms of the master plan is that if you're going to do that ring road around the western side of the hill, okay, I believe that you have to take into account these 3 points. 1, construction of sediment detention basins downstream of all major drainages on the west side of Prison Hill, motorized section, prior to discharging water towards Golden Eagle Lane. 2, replacement of the off-the-trailer wash culvert with a culvert that's big enough to take high-intensity storm precipitation, because there was actually a hidden culvert there that was totally missed and only discovered by me and some other people and it's a much bigger culvert than of the trailer culvert. That was intended to take the full flow from off the trailer. And the third is removal of post-storm eroded sediment from both the roadway after storms and the drainage ditch on the east side of the roadway. And that's all I'm looking for. And in the end, I said these issues were previously the subject of a code enforcement complaint by myself. But the city continues to ignore them and really ignore them to this day. And it's time to admit the responsibility. Carson City. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bantel. Okay. Do I have anyone else? Ms. Orloff?
Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Robin Orloff here. Good morning, supervisors, mayor. I'd like to talk a little bit about the master plan, the Prison Hill master plan that we'll be discussing later. And I have to say that I think it's a well-written plan. It's very inclusive. I'm very supportive of most of it in that plan. And as you know, my main concern is in the OHV area. And to specify that, my concern, even within that area, is just the West Basin, which is a very small part. It's about 1/3 of the entire area. I think that the area is largely greatly improved, the staging area. I think the roads, the double track, Toad Road, Summit Road, Cable Road, they're awesome. They're sustainable as promised, and I think they've cleaned up the area, improved the area, made the riding incredibly more fun, challenging, and protected the area. My concern, as is discussed by these prior, is erosion and sedimentation, 6.3 in the master plan, talking about a common occurrence on the Prison Hill, impacts from runoff during storm events, and the need to mitigate impacts from erosion and prevent topsoil loss. And I know this has been an epic year, but I'd like to look at not just the erosion, but what is the root of the erosion. And what I have requested is a reconsideration of some of the trails. There are 6 ephemeral streams. There are main ephemeral streams, crawler routes in every single one of those streams. And my concern is that the soil is being disrupted by the use and the vegetation is being pulled out. And that's probably what's causing more erosion downstream. The know before you go rules ask the riders not to ride the washes or the slopes or the fall lines, to stay in the bottom of the wash. And in 4 of those washes, I would say that's being achieved. My only concern is really 2 of the washes that I would like to be reconsidered, and I think would help the health of the area tremendously. I think you can't understand it unless you go out and look at it. I'm willing to go. I'll take anyone out. I'd love open space to come along, OSAC. I thank the members of the board who've gone out and have spent hours looking at this, and I appreciate that, and I hope it will result in a discussion, and if not, a modification of the plan. Once the plan goes into effect, I hope it will be a forum for all of us to continue to discuss and improve the area. And I value it. I love it. I dirt bike it, and I don't want it to go away. I want it to get better, and I'll do whatever I can to achieve that.
Thank you. Do I have any other?
Hello, my name is Chris McClung. My comments are regarding the Prison Hill OHV area and some people wanting some trails shut down to certain use. Well, I've lived here since 1998. I own my home in the neighborhood next to Prison Hill. My Prison Hill is my backyard. I own 2 businesses in this city, Alpine Lock and Battleborn Wheels, which is directly related to off-roading. I've been utilizing Prison Hill for 25 years. My hobbies include hiking, off-roading, and rock crawling. I've been rock crawling all over the western states, and Prison Hill is one of the most unique OHV areas in the region and the only area in Carson City where my family and friends can go rock crawling. I know rock crawling is the most extreme OHV motorized sport that is still allowed at Prison Hill. I understand there's a small handful of people motivated to close Prison Hill so only their hobbies and their passions are allowed to utilize the area. I've heard the reasoning behind this is due to the erosion in the area, which is simply false. We had record-breaking precipitation last winter and it has affected all areas alike. There's no way to pinpoint any one issue to just the one sport. I know that if you close Prison Hill to extreme off-roading, then you would be stripping thousands of people in the community of a place to recreate. I know that extreme off-road use won't be the last of the closures because their argument could be applied to any person in the space regardless of their hobby. I fear that this leads to shutting the area of all off-roading and motorized sports. It starts with the most extreme end, which in this case is the rock crawlers, then leads to side-by-sides, dirt bikes, and when the rest of the community finally figures out what's happening, it's too late. The area will be closed to all. There are countless of square miles that have already been closed to off-road use. This is the only place in the city of its kind. That's why it's so imperative to continue to keep the trails open. The rock crawling community loves Prison Hill, and it's the primary reason why my family and I live in the conjoined neighborhood. My good friend Brian runs a Friends of Prison Hill group online. He organizes area improvements and cleanups, and the majority of the people that show up are the rock crawlers, and we go out there and we clean up the trails and we try to keep everything nice. I'd be happy to collaborate with all the community members, regardless of their hobbies and their self-interest, in finding a way to have a place where we can all coexist and continue to enjoy this space. I'm here to help support the use of Prison Hill OHV and keeping land open for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the opening public comment period and move on to agenda item number 6, which is approval of our minutes. We have 2 sets to do today, April 6th, 2023 and March 3rd, 2023. Doesn't matter which one we do, it's kind of a funny order, but do we have any changes or corrections for April 6th?
I did have a minor typo, which I provided to the clerk. I move to approve with the corrections, the April 6, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting and the March 3rd, 2023 Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission joint meeting as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the April 6th, 2023 minutes as amended and the March 3rd, 2023 joint meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to our special presentations, and so if we can, you'll all join me on the floor, we will do our special presentations. I'm guessing that's why we have so many in the room this morning. I love it. How about, I'm guessing, is there some muscle-powered people in here? I thought maybe there might be. So we're going to celebrate Bike Month. Yeah, pretty exciting, except for me. I'm not good on a bike. I kind of like fall off of them and things like that, so. Oh, I might be able to handle that. Yeah, could be both. He's harassing me.
I've seen her on a bike.
Yeah, it's just not my best look. Okay. Whereas the bicycle is a healthy and eco-friendly form of alternative transportation and an excellent tool for recreation and enjoyment of Carson City's scenic beauty. And whereas Carson City recognizes bicyclists as legitimate roadway users who are therefore entitled to a legal and responsible use of all public roadway facilities in Carson City. Whereas Carson City, recognizing the use of bicycles as a viable mode of transportation, endeavors to promote safe and responsible bicycling and is committed to incorporating the continued development of bicycle infrastructure through the implementation of our Complete Streets concept. Whereas Carson City has been designated as a bronze level bicycle-friendly city by the League of American Bicyclists, what do we got to do to get higher? Is it like huge? Because I think we work pretty hard for bicycling around it. Yeah? Just going to take something over the top for us to get there? Scott and I are working on it. Do you have 1 year to get it done? Oh, should I put a little pressure on them? Just pressure. No, but I really can't personally thank Muscle Power for all their work to make biking and trail systems phenomenal. So I know they've been working for years actually on that. Whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Carson City will experience the joys of bicycling through educational programs, commuting events, or by simply getting out and going for a ride. And hopefully we'll have good weather that doesn't rain on you too. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Bike Month in Carson City. Did you guys want to say anything?
Good morning. My name is Chelsea Kinchlow. I am the president of the board for Muscle Powered, and May is Bike Month, and so this is just encouraging everyone to get out and ride your bike. We have several events throughout the month, so if you guys are interested in participating in any, please go to our website, and it's all on our calendar. Did you have Scott?
Yeah, my name's Scott Bohemier. I'm the Western Nevada Safe Routes to School Program Coordinator. And we work with Muscle Powered a lot on different events. And basically, we go out and teach bike skills and bike safety to the school children around. Speaking of that, next week, May 11th, is Bike to School Day. So I encourage everybody to keep your eye out. The west side of Carson will actually have 50 to 100 kids probably riding. We have a lot of schools that are involved. We're having our first ever Rack 'em Up contest, where each school will go around and count how many bikes they have on their rack. And the one with the most bikes is going to win some special prizes. So we expect a lot of bicyclists to be out there, so please keep your eye out for them.
Perfect. That's a fun event. Has a little math involved with it. So anything that you can do to involve that, I like it. So how about a picture? Is there anybody else with a... If you have a bicycle, you can get in the picture, right? That stays up straight when you ride it. Now you guys are catching on. I don't always stay on it. So let's have a picture. Perfect. Thank you guys again for all your hard work and supporting it. Thank you. And then I think there's some people that are here for Historic Preservation and Archaeological Awareness Month. This is a popular month. I love it. Mr. Drews, come on up. I'll do the proclamation first, right? Okay. So, whereas historic preservation and archaeological awareness are effective tools for managing growth and sustainable development, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. Whereas historic preservation and archaeological awareness are relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds. Whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as people. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Historic Preservation and Archaeological Awareness Month, and call upon the people of Carson City to join their fellow citizens across the Nevada in recognizing and participating in this special observation. Yeah, and Mr. Drews. How many years have you been working for the good of all of Carson City? A long time. You owe him a debt.
Mayor Dan Flammer appointed me to my first position on the Historic Resources Commission. So it's been a while.
I knew it, but we owe you just a debt of gratitude. It takes people in the community, right, that have a passion for something, and you're certainly emulate that well.
Well, thank you. And as part of Historic Preservation Month, I want to remind everybody that we're doing our 2023 scavenger hunt again. This year, the theme is architectural elements from 1900 to 1975. The National Register recognizes anything over 50 years old as historic. So welcome. And secondly, we like to use National Historic Preservation Month to present our annual Historic Preservation Award. Each year, Carson City recognizes significant preservation accomplishments to celebrate our community's history and heritage as part of Preservation Month. It serves as a reminder of the important historic resources that give meaning and a sense of place to communities, to focus the attention. It's critical to make sure that those resources are preserved. This year, we'd like to honor one of our board members, Dr. Greg Hayes, unexpectedly passed in November of this year. He served on the Historic Commission for over 15 years. When I think of Greg, I think of stewardship. He really cared about the historic district. And more importantly, he cared about the property owners within the district and sympathized with the challenges that owning and maintaining an historic property brings. Dr. Gregg spent countless hours photographing architectural elements within the district and even more time making sure that the photographs match the proper addresses. We can owe the scavenger hunt to Greg. We'd like to present the award this year posthumously to Dr. Greg Hayes, to his wife, Joan Wright, who now serves on the commission.
When Greg moved to Carson City in 1982, he told me it was for 1 year. He never brought that subject up again. He loved Carson City, and thank you so much for acknowledging his work for.
Is there anybody else that again wants to, do we have a scavenger hunt extraordinaire in the room? There might be somebody that loves to do that. I love that project, but it's fun. Yeah, it's really fun. Okay, and then we have some uniforms in the room, so you know who's next. Come on up, gang. I'll wait till they get up here. Come on, this is important too. It's all important. All right, we got everybody? Okay, so this is a longer period than just the month of May, but it's whereas wildfire significantly impacts Nevada's environmental, economic, and social well-being. Whereas residents must prepare to survive wildfire by ensuring proper management of vegetation surrounding the home and appropriate home construction and maintenance to resist ignition. Whereas residents need to work together to prepare their homes and communities to survive wildfire and commit to become fire adapted. And whereas residents can save precious time in an evacuation by preparing a go bag and family evacuation plan ahead of time. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim the Nevada Wildfire Awareness Campaign from May through October. So I'm not asking you to get your go bags ready right away. You got May to November to get it done. And Lisa, does you guys have a nice list and a thing all about fire? If you haven't had an opportunity to do co-op extension, they have a lot of free material and resources to help you accomplish the goal here. And I see a whole bunch of people in uniforms that I bet would also be more than happy to help get this done. Does anybody want to say something? You're in?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. I just wanted to introduce Battalion Chief Kevin Nyberg, he's the newest Battalion Chief in the Carson City Fire Department. So congratulations, Kevin, and now you get a chance to talk.
So as the newest, I was elected to speak this morning. You're it, yeah. So we just wanted to take an opportunity to say a couple of things and let the citizens know what we are doing to be proactive about wildfire this year. And one of those is our NV Energy crew. And this is a dedicated wildland response crew that is on duty 365 days a year. And they do a couple of things. One, they're ready to go with a brush truck that can respond and bolster the Carson City Fire Department. But they also take part in a lot of fuels reduction programs throughout the year. And that's a partnership program with NV Energy. So they, you might have seen their handiwork this past week. They did some control burning up in the Lakeview area. And so they do a lot of projects like that around where they're clearing brush around power lines and in our urban interface areas. We also have seasonals that are going to be coming on. They're going to be bolstering what these guys do. They're also going to be doing a lot of fuels reduction throughout the city. And we also have the sheep that are coming on, our annual sheep. So you see the herds of sheep up on the west side, and they do a great job of also reducing the fuels and the threat to wildfire. So yeah, we also want to take an opportunity to look at how wildfire is going to impact each citizen and make sure that you're being proactive about that and seeing how your own situation is impacted. So we have Jamie here with Living with Fire. She can speak to that a little bit.
Sorry, I'll make this quick. For the record, my name is Jamie Royce Combs, and I am the manager of the Living with Fire program. We're a part of University of Nevada, Reno Extension, and we are a statewide multi-agency effort. We work with local, state, and federal firefighting agencies to help residents to prepare for wildfire. So as we know, wildfire can threaten Nevadan communities and impact property and, unfortunately, sometimes human health. And so the key to minimizing the impact of wildfire is having communities that are prepared. So in response, local, state, and federal firefighting agencies, wildfire-prone communities, and University of Nevada, Reno Extension has had this campaign since 2006. And so this year, our theme is, I always forget it, protect your home, prepare for wildfire. I just want to say thank you for having us here, and thank you for this great partnership. And can we get a picture with a banner too? Absolutely. Okay.
Lisa, do you want to give, because it's also recorded and people are listening, do you want to give people an idea of where they could come for your office and obtain services?
Thank you. We're so excited to be here with this partnership. We have a great opportunity to educate the public, and certainly through, I think, some upcoming programs that will be sponsored here in our community, people can become more aware. Our office is at 2621 Northgate, which is just behind the Northgate Shopping Center. We'd love for you to come by. We have many materials and supplies that could help you, whether it's that list or it's certainly some information about how to adapt your landscaping. So we're really excited about that opportunity. Again, please stop by. We're open 8 to 5, and we'd love to have you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for all the efforts to keep Carson City safe. That's what it's all about. So thank you. And I guess to you.
I'm going to do my best to fill his shoes. Thank you.
Just a moment to exit. Okay, we're now on to our consent agenda. Did anyone want anything pulled? Okay, I'll accept a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 8A, 9A, 9B, 9C, 9D, 9E, 9F, 9G, 9H, and 9I as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 11, which is discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of 2 members to the Audit Committee, each for a partial term ending December 2024. I will do my disclosure. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. This agenda item is for the possible appointment of members to the Audit Committee. I personally know one of the candidates. David Lambin is a friend of mine, and as the state regent for the Daughters of the American Revolution, I once commissioned his wife's artwork for the Nevada Women's Right to a celebration for the 100-year of women's suffrage rights on behalf of that organization. Although Mr. Lambin is a friend, I do not have any commitment in a private capacity to him or to his wife. I make this disclosure in the interest of full transparency, but because my independence of judgment is not materially affected by my friendship with Mr. Lambin and his wife, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter. I don't have anyone else listed for disclosure, so Ms. Paulson, do we have, we will, one candidate? I will announce that we have one candidate here today to consider. Our next meeting, we will do the second candidate. They just weren't able to attend today, so we have to split this one up. Ms. Paulson?
We have,
Mr. Lambin?
yeah, Mr. Lambden.
Come on up. It's already green if you sit on the end, or you can turn that one off and sit in the center and make it green. Either way.
All works.
First of all, I'm just going to start with thank you for applying for the Audit Committee, because it's, certainly the most favored committee for people to, it's so much fun. David, will you tell us a little bit about what you think of the Audit Committee and how you could be of service to us?
Well, from what I understand, it's an opportunity to review certain processes and opportunities, or not opportunities, but processes and projects that are going on in the city, and to be able to give an opinion of the return on investment, if you will, and if it's the project is actually hitting the points that it was designated to do, where some of the problems may have arisen, where some of the things may have excelled. And I've had an opportunity in my career to do a fair amount of auditing on the insurance basis, looking at different companies to acquire, looking at different divisions. And some of the processes will flow over, some of the reviews, and some of the experience.
Great, thank you so much. Does somebody want to go for Lisa? You are on the opposite end. Go ahead, you get to go first this time.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
What you just said actually kind of leads into this question, and thank you for applying. What was your motivation to apply?
Last of my children is moving out in June. He's going to New Orleans to start a residency as an emergency doctor. And so my wife and I have no plans on moving. We like it here. We moved here from Chicago, actually to Gardnerville in Chicago in '95. Raised our children here and feel pretty invested. And so it's an opportunity for me. I'm not retired, but it's an opportunity for me to get involved on a level that will use my skills.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Horton, you have a question? Nope. Yeah. Do you have any questions, Mr. White? No questions? Nor do I. Yeah, like I said, we can't thank you enough for applying for this committee. We are so thrilled to have people.
We don't want
with
to
a-
scare anybody away.
Yeah,
so,
with a caliber on their resume as you do, to be able to provide assistance and help us. So, thank you very much for coming in this morning and again
You're welcome.
agreeing to do this. I don't generally take public comment on any board appointments, so I'll bring it up here. And anybody want to make the motion? Because you
Sure.
can't run. We're not going to let you get out of the room before we make the
No, I
motion.
can't run.
I move to appoint David Lambin to fill, sorry, Mike wasn't on. I move to appoint David Lambin to to fill a partial term on the Audit Committee expiring in December of 2024.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you again so very much.
Thank you, one and all.
We'll get to work. They'll start sending you stuff to read and things, but thank you.
All right,
We
thank you.
really appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna move on, and he does have he said his son is emergency medicine and Rachel is,
Our daughter is moving back to Carson, Tahoe. She had spent a year in Riverside as a OBGYN resident. And after a
Yeah.
year, it decided that it just wasn't for her. She enjoyed it. She succeeded in everything, but she's coming here to start a residency in psychiatry.
that will fit Rachel. All right.
Yep.
Well, congratulations, two
thank you.
stellar, well, he has more than two stellar children, but two doctors.
Yeah, no, it's funny, but we participated with WNC, where all three of the kids went as a community college, and all three went to UNR for their,
See,
and the med school produced two at UNR for
isn't it
amazing.
awesome? Great job.
The opportunity of the community has a lot to offer.
Thank
So-
you. Thank you. That was nice. Okay. All right, we are now on to agenda item 11B. This is discussion and possible action regarding a proposed settlement concerning an arbitration award issued in favor of the Carson City Deputy Sheriff's Association arising out of a dispute under the terms of a collective bargaining agreement. Does any member have any questions or anything to bring up? Pretty cut and dry. Oh, Supervisor Chiomi?
So if I'm reading this right, the discussion we had before was that, and the sticking point was that there would be no probation served, and that's still the case. Is that true?
Correct.
So we decided not to proceed with any additional legal action?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what this says. That's correct. Supervisor Shooty?
I understand this process and I understand the argument, but I have to say I'm disappointed that the association really isn't trying or supporting a probationary period. In that, I just think it's incredibly important for people in a new field or in a new position to really have the opportunity to learn and reflect and have the chance to really be adept at what they're doing, or realize that it isn't something that it might not be a good fit for them. And I understand the reasoning behind not extending, but my hope is in this process that the person who is being promoted really is mindful of making sure that there's a clear understanding of the job and how to lead and how to supervise, because supervision, you can be the best deputy in the world, the best police officer, the best firefighter, the best accountant, whatever, but a supervisory role is a different skill set, and that is the purpose of the probationary period. So I'm struggling with this a little bit, but I also understand the whys behind it. I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring this back up for a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada, Mayor and Supervisors. This particular item caught my attention. It was one of the first on the line that I was really little concerned about myself. Probationary times allow for fluctuation of understandings between the crews, and the personnel, the staff. And I think they're very important. And while I don't want to discourage anything that the police or fire put out there as far as their comfort level, it's not real comfortable for me not to have probationary times, because I think they are really, they're sort of like, you have to go through it. I mean, probationary puts you in a spot of observation for yourself, review and considerations for your adapting to a situation and such. And without that understanding that you're in sort of the spotlight, not just because you're the new kid in the position, but it's a whole new job to you. And so I was a little concerned about that, but I didn't get to read all the arguments for and against. My gut feeling, though, is when we had a crew member come on, even if there was not a stated probation time, we sort of kept an eye on each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No other? Okay, bring it back up to the board. Someone want to make a motion? Supervisor Horton?
I move to adopt the settlement as discussed and authorize the district attorney's office to take all necessary steps to effectuate this settlement.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
So the motion.
I'm sorry, how many no's?
The motion has failed, unless I'm missing it wrong. Oh, wait, are you a yes, Supervisor Schutte?
I am a yes.
Okay,
I
sorry.
stated on the record that
The rationale for.
correct. So sorry, I just pressed the wrong thing.
Okay, so let the record reflect that the motion passed with Mayor Bagwell, Supervisor Horton, and Supervisor Schutte, with yeses, Supervisor Giomi and Supervisor White with a no. So I will disclose for the record that I want to actually echo the sentiments of all of us, right? My yes vote is to close the matter. And I want to put that on the record. It's not because I agree with the arbitrator, because I don't think a single one of us here does. But an arbitrator carries a lot of weight in case law and rules. And so we gave it our best shot, because I think each and every one of us here believe that probation periods are necessary. But we also have to recognize when we're not going to win the battle, and I'm expending taxpayer dollars to fight that battle. And so everything we do here is a balancing act. If I'm super honest, right? Everything, every decision that we make, we're trying to balance. So I hope by placing the information on the record about probationary periods, that everyone understands how important they are for any organization, right? And I think it's for the person that's going to serve the probation and for their fellow coworkers. I think they're important. They're training grounds. But for me, it's just time to put this matter to rest. So thank you all. I know it was a hard decision.
And I agree partially with the idea when you know you can't win,
Yeah.
you give up. Well, this is not a parallel transfer. This is a very stressful job that needs a probationary period. Sometimes you go into a war knowing you're going to lose, but you have to make the effort to the very bitter end. No matter how many black eyes you get, you fight it to the end. And that's what we should be doing here.
All right. We're now going to move on to agenda item 11C, which is discussion and possible action on our legislative activity. Is Mr. Wood coming today or not?
No, I'm actually playing the part of Stephen today because he's not feeling well. So
Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Paulson.
I'll try my best. So just a couple of items. SB 235, this was a bill sponsored by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, and that seeks to allow for continuances in pretrial release hearings. Although the bill does not address the requirements to hold such a hearing within 48 hours, local governments did propose an amendment to change the requirement to 72 hours and exclude weekends and holidays in the calculation of that time. The committee ended up rejecting that amendment. However, it did lead to further discussions with the committee chair and other senators who are now planning to seek an appropriation from the state general fund to help defray the cost of the 48-hour requirement. So we're hopeful that these conversations continue, and although not a total win, it's a step in the right direction. So that would offset the employees that have to come in on Saturdays and Sundays. And then the next item is SB 272, that's Senator Spearman's bill to require state and local governments to collect and report information on our website regarding how many of our contracts went to minority, women, or LGBTQ-owned businesses. We would be required to report the total number of contracts that went to these businesses, as well as the total dollar amount that went towards these contracts. The League of Cities and the Urban Consortium testified in opposition to the bill because of concerns regarding its implementation, how local governments would be able to collect such information, and potential needs for updated software in order to be able to comply with that. So the bill was heard in the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs yesterday and is expected to be voted out of committee. That's the end of the update.
Anybody have any questions? Supervisor Giomi.
Yeah, I just wanted to report briefly that one of the bills that NACO was supporting, as was the district attorney, is it Mark Johnson from Douglas County? Is that right?
The president.
Jackson. He's the president of the DA's Association for the state of Nevada, was the bill for pay for county elected officials. And that looks like it failed. Didn't meet a deadline, but NACO, along with Mark and the DA's Association, continue to pursue it through other means, and there is some hope. I just bring that up because I believe in that bill. You start to get concerned that the pay for our elected officials, like sheriffs, like clerks, like assessors, who administer at the very heart of the most important things that we as counties do, elections and laws, are in a lot of counties getting paid significantly less than employees who work for them. And I begin to get concerned as someone who's responsible for policy at the government level that we're not going to attract quality individuals. I think we're fortunate in our region that we've continued to do that. Mr. Hohn has proven that, but even he will tell you that it was significantly
Pay cut.
difficult decision and a pay cut to take the job. And I don't think any of us are advocating that anyone who takes an elected position should get rich, because that's not what it's about. But the pay should be commensurate with the responsibility, particularly when we're talking about, as I said, the very fundamental things that government's responsible to do. So
I'll chime in. I appreciate that. I mean, on the clerk side, the register of voters side, they lost 10 out of 17 county clerks this past year. And a couple more are hanging on just because they were hopeful of that. But now they're gonna have to wait another 2 years if nothing does happen.
Yeah.
So,
and the bill, just so we're clear, the bill, I mean, no one would be voting to raise their own salaries, with the exception of the elected officials outside of the county commission. So in other words, if we decided to pass the bill, and it's only an enabling bill. It does not require pay to be raised. It just is an enabling bill. And anyone who votes on raising pay could not take advantage of it. In other words,
Until their next election.
Assuming they are even up for reelection or run again, it would not be applicable. That's not the case for the other elected officials, the other constitutional officers who it could take effect on right away. So anyway, I'll keep you posted as I hear more, but NACO's not really given up, and hopefully there's a way through the back door to. It comes up every 3 or 4 years, and ideally maybe we could change the law so that it is no longer a responsibility of the legislature, that it just rests with the county governments. So that's all I had from a NACO legislative committee perspective.
Anybody have anything else to report? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Mr. French?
Thank you very much, Mayor and Supervisors. When I counted up the number of legislations that we are supporting, or at least keeping track of, I appreciate the number, but I don't understand the process that was to develop that list. And it would be helpful from my understanding if you could explain how that comes to be. I have things I'd like to encourage onto this list, but can someone later help me with that?
We'd be happy to later.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item 12A, which is discussion and possible action on recommendations from the Carson City Open Space Advisory Committee for the naming of 7 open space properties located throughout the city. Ms. Boyer.
Good morning. For the record, Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager for Carson City. So this item before you today deals with going through the formal naming process for several of our open space properties. We do have a formal resolution that speaks to how open space properties should be named, which is included in your packet. So this has been sort of a cleanup project to get any properties named that haven't been formally named previously. And many of these properties had common names that the public referred to them as, so we tried to stick with that as much as possible. We don't want to confuse the public. So the process we typically follow is we completed a survey for the public in the fall of 2022, where we provide map, photos, history, background on these properties, and ultimately give the public an opportunity to weigh in on what they think it should be named, and we provide staff recommendations as well. So the results of those surveys are in your packet. Ultimately, we brought these results to the Open Space Advisory Committee in October of 2022, and they provided the final recommendations to you, the board, which are included in the main portion of your packet. So we have 7 properties that we were looking to name. I'm not sure how you want to go through the process, if you want me to go property by property, or if you have any specific questions on what we've got for you.
So let's just start with the first properties recommended to be Ash Canyon View Crest Open Space. Does any member of the board have an issue with that name? Supervisor Giomi, are you trying to?
I don't love it,
comment?
but I couldn't come up with anything better, so it's fine.
Well, some of it, isn't that some truth there? Okay, then we're all right with number 1. We'll move on to number 2 is Eagle Valley Open Space. Everybody okay with that? Number 3, North Kings Canyon Open Space. Supervisor Schutte?
I'm fine with it, although is the north, do we need the north? Do we need that delineation?
Great question. The reason why we included the north designation is this particular property follows North Kings Canyon Road versus the main Kings Canyon Road that goes up the canyon and actually belongs to the Forest Service. So that was the only reason for that distinction. We didn't want people to be confused.
Then I am absolutely fine with it. Thank you.
Okay, the fourth one is Timberline Open Space. Anybody have a problem with issue? Okay, then we're gonna go with, the next one is Ash Canyon Gateway. You have a question? Okay. Supervisor White?
I do respect the thoughtfulness of the Open Space Committee. However, these open space properties are really a special set-aside property that should be identified as such whenever they're referred to. Additionally, I feel like the term open space creates a lot of confusion, because if you look through CCMC, you look through all the government documents that we have, there's probably a dozen different definitions of what open space really is. And I'm gonna have to advocate for Ash Canyon open space rather than Gateway, because that's, we have to be able to help people visualize that these properties are grouped together in a special manner from question 1 or 18, and they're actually managed differently than our regular parks. And I think we have to have that designation in their names to help the residents understand the difference of what goes on these properties.
I think that's a valid discussion on 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Because that is our true open space. And Supervisor White is correct that often the public misunderstands open space within the development standards. And so I believe we should always educate at the same time if possible. And so I also did listen to the hearing. I mean, I went and thought, okay, what's their comments and the whys? And I didn't really hear any strength of discussion. There wasn't a whole bunch of public coming up to help the committee come up with names or to change the names. I also heard in the discussion that oftentimes it gets truncated. They're not going to say open space. People are just going to say the Sea Hill Trail or the Timberline. You know, they're not going to put open space. But I agree with Supervisor White that our maps, when they say open space, it becomes clear that that's within the designated Department of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. And so I like the map to depict who has responsibility for it whenever possible. And I also agree with the committee and with you, I think, that said, it doesn't mean the people in the community will say open space, but I do think we should always be reiterating who has responsibility for it. I think when you get to the next item in Prison Hill, we have so many other jurisdictions that have component responsibilities that they may or may not take care of. And so I think it's important that we put the naming on that. My question is, should Gateway stay and it adds open space to be consistent with Viewcrest, or the Viewcrest is the designation that tells me the difference between the two trails? Because they both say, you know, Ash Canyon. So that's really my question.
Yeah, great question. And I agree with the open space piece. I think that's a great way to educate the public and let them know who owns these lands, and the fact that, you know, they're not BLM anymore and that they are owned by Carson City. So I think that is important for education. Regarding the two kind of Ash Canyon properties, the Ash Canyon Gateway is located at the bottom of Ash Canyon, right when you come into Ash Canyon Road. So I think that's where the Gateway kind of piece came in. And then as far as the Viewcrest, that's all the way at the top of Ash Canyon. So that's where that came in. So I do think those monikers were valuable to kind of orient you to where you are.
Okay, so potentially Ash Canyon Gateway.
That's
open
exactly what
space.
I was going to say, is I
Open
would like
space
to
gateway?
suggest 5, reading Ash Canyon Gateway Open Space.
Okay.
And I think it adds consistency.
Can I just comment to that too? I think, you know, I've been speaking to Public Works and I know Parks and Rec will be involved with this, but, you know, there's an opportunity for a flap grant on Ash Canyon Road. And Ash Canyon Road can desperately use a flap grant to fix that road, fix the access to Forest Service lands, and the gateway, in my mind, plays right into that because it would be the gateway for the basis of the flap grant. Federal Land Access Program is what FLAP is, well, something like that. Anyway, so I think Gateway should stay. I agree. And I like open space too.
Okay, so then that, I hope, is the consistency when we go to the Sea Hill. It would be Sea Hill open space.
And you get rid of preserve?
Yeah, we don't need preserve. I think that evokes a different thought for people when you put something on a map. I don't want to mislead people that it's an animal preserve or, yeah, it's like,
Right.
what, I wish, let me say it
Elephants and
differently.
giraffes.
Potentially, maybe someday we could have done a Silver Saddle Ranch could be a preserve, but that way people are coming to visit something specific. But anyway, it should be Sea Hill open space.
Should we further define it a little better? Sea Hill is huge, and
Okay.
there may be opportunities in the future for us to acquire other Sea Hill land, and then there's a possibility for it to be disjointed from this. So what about North Sea Hill? Because it is the north side. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with it the way it is, but I just think about the future. I really think there's a lot of potential for acquisition there down the road.
I think-
Could we at that time, though, other ones would
I
get the
guess we could
specific
change them,
names?
sure.
And we could, mhm.
And if those properties were contiguous, they would just fold right in.
I agree. I agree if they're contiguous.
Without any
Correct.
other designation.
No, I totally agree with that.
Okay. Supervisor Horton, you were in concurrence with where we were going. So we have Ash Canyon, Viewcrest open space, Eagle View open space, North Kings Canyon open space, Timberline open space, Ash Canyon Gateway open space, Sea Hill open space, and Buzzy's Ranch open space. Is there any public comment on any of those? It's going to go just like it did at the commission meeting, I heard. Okay, I'll just make that the motion as the names that I just read into the record. Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we're going to move on to agenda item 12B, which is discussion and possible action regarding a proposed draft of the Prison Hill Master Plan for the preservation, design, and development of Prison Hill in Carson City. Which one's going to start, Greg or Lindsay?
I'll start. Thank you, Mayor and board. Let me bring my PowerPoint up. Let's see. Yeah, I did.
Sometimes it takes the.
Where is my? Okay, there we go. All right. For the record, Greg Berger, Trails Coordinator. So this plan has been a collaborative effort on behalf of a number of staff members for a period of years, and we're excited to finally bring this to the board. There's a lot of material in this plan, and I'm not going to cover everything in detail, but I would like to cover some of the highlights. So, let's see. Okay, so first of all, Prison Hill, a little bit of background. Prison Hill is probably one of the most prominent geographic features within Eagle Valley, rising over 1,100 feet from the base to summit and covering nearly 5 square miles. And we have several contiguous open space properties that make up Prison Hill, and collectively that creates the largest open space that we have within Carson City. And this plan covers several different properties, and those include the Prison Hill Recreation Area of 2,500 acres, the Golden Eagle Open Space for 19 acres, the Mexican Dam Open Space, 64 acres, the Coons Lane parcel, 114 acres, and Silver Saddle Ranch. While this is not a master plan for Silver Saddle Ranch, we included it because it provides a critical trailhead and access to the east side of Prison Hill. Okay, so the vision of the plan is to protect and preserve the natural resources, cultural resources, scenic beauty, and conservation values of the property while balancing the needs of a growing and changing population by providing high-quality recreational opportunities for a variety of users. And the key word here is balance, and that's always challenging, but we believe that this plan seeks to provide that balance. A little bit of a history of planning efforts for Prison Hill. So planning really goes back to the 1970s when the Bureau of Land Management started looking at recreational opportunities for a rapidly growing community. In 1977, the BLM observed that the primary use of Prison Hill was for off-road vehicles. In 1983, the BLM designated about 950 acres on the south end of Prison Hill for OHV use, and they designated the remainder of the hill for non-motorized use. Between 1983 and 2015, there were several local planning efforts like the Carson River Master Plan and the Silver Saddle Ranch in Carson River Charette. And then in 2015, the Prison Hill Recreation area was conveyed from the Bureau of Land Management to Carson City as part of the Omnibus Public Lands Management Act of 2009, or better known as OPLMA. In 2016, the management plan for open space and parks in the Carson River area was developed. The management plan identified the need for a future planning effort, and this is that future planning effort. Since the management plan, some of the additional planning efforts include the Eagle Valley Trails Committee report in 2017, the Unified Pathways Master Plan revision in 2018, the Signage Master Plan in 2018, the Prison Hill OHV Management Plan in 2018, the Prison Hill Recreation Area Master Plan Survey in 2019, and the Prison Hill Recreation Area Open House, in 2020. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about the what we call the Coons parcel. So this is a piece of property that is on the west side of Prison Hill and at the east end of Coons Lane, right in here. You can see the water tank, the big water tank right there. This property was conveyed to Carson City in 2015 as part of OPLMA, just like the rest of the Prison Hill Recreation Area. However, this piece of property was designated for parks and public purposes, and that designation permits a variety of uses. Through the process of holding the survey and the open house and listening to the comments from people over the years, our recommendation is, because this is essentially the western gateway to Prison Hill, that this area be managed primarily by the Open Space Division for passive recreation in cooperation with the Public Works Department, who maintains critical water infrastructure on the property. And then additionally, there are some BLM parcels over here to the west of the Coons parcel. We had recommended, we had some zoning, well, first of all, back up. The Bureau of Land Management has expressed interest in eliminating those from their holdings because they really don't want to manage a few acres within Carson City. So we had made a recommendation on zoning in that area. If that should happen, based on comments or recommendation from Mayor Bagwell, we'll strike that from the plan. However, we do recommend that if it is developed in the future, that we retain these two pedestrian access points. Okay, so on Prison Hill, the city and the Nevada Division of State Lands have some adjoining properties. And on this map, you can see these little properties here circled in yellow are owned by Carson City, but the Nevada Division of State Lands manages those properties for their own purposes. And when Prison Hill was conveyed to us from the BLM, those two properties came with existing easements. And so the state of Nevada continues to exercise those easements. And then right here, where's my pointer? So this is a property that's owned by the state of Nevada, but it's on Prison Hill, as is this property right here. There probably are good reasons that we would prefer to manage those as part of the Prison Hill Recreation Area. So in the meantime, the plan supports a cooperative partnership to manage the properties in a way that meets the goals and objectives of both landowners. And that could include easements, agreements, land swaps, et cetera, as opportunities arise in the future.
Yes, you may. It's easier to do it as we
Greg,
go.
do you think there's a possibility that where those solar panels are, which is our land technically with an easement to them, that we could do a swap? I mean, would that be possible under the terms of that land ownership agreement where we acquired that little triangle, yellow triangle? Do you know? the answer to that? Maybe you don't know the answer.
So I think Lindsay's ready to.
So as I understand it, we acquired it during the lands bill, Carson City lands bill. It came with the easement for the state. So if we wanted to say to the state, look, we want these, teal properties, you can have the yellow properties and we'll just do a swap. Do you know if the federal legislation will allow for that?
Lindsay Boyer, for the record, Open Space Manager. My understanding is that because those lands came to us through a congressional lands bill, the only way to do a swap would be through another congressional lands bill.
Okay. Well, maybe we can.
Only 6-year activity,
Maybe
sorry.
maybe we can
It's a good
confirm
idea.
that, Dan, or whoever your attorney is.
Yeah, we can definitely confirm
I'm not
that,
disagreeing
but-
with you. I
yeah.
think it probably is the case, but I would like to confirm it before, because that would, I think there's almost zero chance you're gonna get a lands bill through to swap 4 acres. It's not gonna happen.
Well, and we have because we have our lands bill
Well, I
that's been
know.
marked up, so it's a.
I know, but I think it
Is
might be
this
too
something we
far
could?
away.
I don't know. We might look at that too.
Yeah, Nancy.
If there's an
potentially
opportunity
look
to
at that,
swap it in. Mhm.
I mean, all we would have to do is designate that we have the ability to transfer the deed to another governmental entity, basically. That's all we'd be asking for.
Right.
It seems like the cleanest way is to not have us manage their lands and to take
Vice
the lands
versa.
that are ours and, roll them into Prison Hill. Or that should be ours, rather, that they don't need. The state's certainly not going to do anything with either of those two that I can think of, so.
And considering at least one of those properties in the teal color has been designated for disposal in recent history.
By the state?
Yes.
Which one of those two? The north one? Yeah. I mean, the southern one, I can almost see them keeping because it's adjacent to the prison. So, if they didn't get rid of that, I guess it wouldn't surprise me. But I don't really have any interest in trying to maintain an easement with them for land that they're using all the time, and it just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Oops, what's going on here? How come it's not moving? What do you think? What's going on?
Apparently, the computer agrees with us.
Apparently
They
you
don't want to
need-
swap
yeah.
those lands either.
There you go.
Use this one. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, moving on. So, non-motorized trails, subject near and dear to my heart. So, guidelines for trail planning came from a variety of sources, including the Unified Pathways Master Plan, Carson City Master Plan, Eagle Valley Trails Committee Report, Carson River and Silver Saddle Ranch Charette, Carson River Master Plan, and for Muscle Powered. And guidelines include sustainability. Sustainably built trails require less maintenance and minimize impacts to the land. User appeal. Well-planned and designed trails tend to discourage creation of social trails, and we've had success with that at the north end of Prison Hill, where we created 1.6 miles of sustainable trail and eliminated 4 or 5 miles of old roads and user-built trails. Accessibility. So I want to quote the Carson City Master Plan guiding principle number 12, which says that Carson City is committed to shared use of most trail corridors, and goes on to say that the city will also seek to provide access to all feasible portions of the pathway system and open space areas for persons with disabilities. And there are opportunities on Prison Hill to provide access for all, and we'll get to that in just a minute. The plan covers environmental and cultural considerations. And then there's also a segment about trails as resilient infrastructure, and I'd like to take a minute to talk about that. So it's a relatively new concept about how can trails play a role in mitigating the effects of a changing climate. The Federal Highway Administration is producing a book on that subject, which should be printed probably later this summer, and Carson City is one of their case studies. The reason is because of all the things that we're doing along those lines. To begin with, our open space program, which is protecting the floodplain, the watershed, the wildlife habitat. Our many planning efforts like the Unified Pathways Master Plan and our Carson City Master Plan. Our efforts to support active transportation, like the freeway multi-use pathway, complete streets, South Carson Street project, the East William Street project, et cetera. How and where we locate trails and how we are building trails, our newer trails, to be more resilient and sustainable. For example, our Prison Hill Trail East, completed in 2020, we oversized a culvert and constructed rockline ditches to capture and redirect sheet flow and direct that to the culverts to reduce stormwater runoff to nearby homes. That trail also provided a fuel break that was recommended in 2008 by our Carson City Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And our Prison Hill Trail West project, which was recently approved by the board to move forward, that project was forwarded to the consultant working on the Southeast Carson Drainage Master Plan to see if trail design features could be incorporated into the project that could complement their forthcoming recommendations. So we need to look at trail design and construction holistically, and how can trails benefit the community in a variety of ways, and how can our departments work collaboratively to make that happen? So we'll move on to, okay, so now we'll move on to the trail plan itself, which is made up of 4 components. Number 1 is the Prison Hill Trail, shown in the red line here around Prison Hill, which is meant to be an inclusive and accessible base trail connecting all the trailheads in a loop, including at least one ADA accessible restroom on each side of Prison Hill. Number 2, single track trails in the middle that would be connecting trailheads across Prison Hill and also creating loop possibilities. Number 3 is trails that provide opportunities for adaptive mountain bikes, and those are shown here in the green. Some of these gentler slopes on the west side and on the north side. And then there are areas designated to be trail-free zones, which is kind of these reddish or purplish blobs kind of in the middle there. And then down here is our OHV area, which is my next topic. So brief history there. Again, that was conveyed to us in 2015 as part of the lands bill, and OHV is the historical use, as it has been for many decades. Motorized travel, when we received the property, was unrestricted, and we recognized that that unrestricted travel was not sustainable for the long term. So we partnered with the National Off-Highway Vehicle Conservation Council to help develop some management strategies and plans to implement improvements, many of which are listed in the plan. And some of the elements for the master plan include better travel management, offering a variety of recreational opportunities in a family-friendly environment, reduce user conflict and trespass into adjacent residential areas, monitoring and maintenance, partnerships, outreach, and education. And then additionally, the plan also recommends creation of some new Carson City municipal codes specific to OHV operation. The first one, and based on comment from our mayor, we're making a correction to that. So we just want to enable the park rangers. We're scratching the sheriff's department because they already have that power to cite for non-compliance with NRS 490, which is the OHV registration. And that OHV registration is important because that funding generates grants that are administered by the Nevada Off-Highway Vehicle Commission, of which we have utilized 3 for that property, along with a grant from the Recreational Trails Program. The other 2 that we recommend are requirements for spark arresters and for sound limit of 96 decibels. Both of those are requirements on federal lands right now, so we would like to just mirror with the federal.
And
Can I ask a
both
question?
of those are also required through NRS 490.
Okay, so.
Right.
Okay, so if that's the case, then we're already covered.
Yes.
Is that good?
We just need to authorize
need
the
to
park
authorize the sheriff.
rangers
Right.
to cite or to control under 490.
I think what we have to do is, if I'm to maintain my junior lawyer badge, I think we have to have that duplicated in CCMC to allow the park ranger to be able to. So that would be the recommendation that you would make.
Okay.
Am I close there? Lawyers in the room? Okay.
Okay, so we'll make that clarification.
You can't give me
Right.
that I'm right. Can't give me that I'm right.
Ask me for you
I can hardly wait for that. If it's
Okay.
anything like my steak and lobster dinner that he
Oh, boy.
gave me.
There we go. Okay. So can you talk to me, sorry, backwards. I just really want to talk about the OHV area. It's something that we just need to put on the record. We need to have an open discussion. It is the area of concern that we get emails or questions and continued concerns from several citizens that want us to, I'll say it this way, be more restrictive in the OHV area. Talk to me about the why or the why nots. I heard the public comments this morning. I read the public comments. And so, not that I want to just put it to rest, because I don't think any answer that we provide is going to be maybe good enough for them. But I do want the public to understand that we take into consideration all comments that we receive. And so what I'm looking for is, why are we not pulling out or restricting more activity in the OHV area that some of the residents of our community are concerned about? Give me what was weighed and why was it determined as this plan is?
So.
Put you on the spot, but we might as well get right to the heart of the issue.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100% and good discussion. So I guess kind of going back to my earlier comments, going back to the 1970s, those of us who've been around that long, we remember when Prison Hill, the entire Prison Hill was open to motorized activity, and it was unrestricted. And when we acquired the 950 acres that BLM had designated, again, motorized access to that area was unrestricted. So there was 950 acres of open ride area. We have reduced that to 47 acres of open ride area. And we recognize and we realize and acknowledge that OHV causes impacts. We know that. We have closed down motorized access to a number of other areas in our open space. For example, along the river corridor, which is definitely a sensitive, environmentally sensitive area. So we've closed down motorized access to a lot of places, but we are trying to provide an opportunity at the south end of Prison Hill for that access that is being requested by a good deal of the public. We heard one comment today. So we're trying to concentrate the usage in that area, and again, we acknowledge that there are impacts. We have a monitoring program. We have our new natural resources specialist that will be starting work June 1st, and she will pick up on that, the monitoring program. We want to be responsive and try to minimize those impacts and address them as best we can. We have done a number of rehab projects in that area where we've done scarification and reseeding and closed some areas. We've closed a number of roads, especially on the east side of the OHV area, because those are roads that led to private property trespass, and they were also very steep and erosive. So we have even closed some areas within that OHV area. And Lindsay, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Everything that Greg said was very true, very good comments. I just wanted to add, in addition to the annual monitoring reports that we've done targeted consultant-led monitoring efforts, analysis of these resources, trying to get their expert opinion. And we've been following the tenets of those plans. We've looked at the golden eagle population specifically. We've looked at the West Basin specifically. Both of those have been analyzed by professionals, and we've been following the guidance that they've provided us. So we've really tried to make an effort to
objectively analyze those comments and try to incorporate them into our planning wherever possible, in balance with trying to provide those recreation opportunities.
I think that comment you just made is the most important aspect, and I alluded to it earlier, right? Everything is in balance. And so if you were to look at the entire process all the way back, considering how many acres were wide open to OHV and how much we have restricted it now down to the 47 acres, I believe we made quite a beneficial exchange in this property area, and that rightfully now this 47 acres is for the recreation that it is designated for. And so while I appreciate that we are admitting that obviously off-road vehicles have impact, none of us is ignoring that, but I want to give a shout out to the group that comes out. I see like a new muscle-powered group, right? That I do believe it's your job to help keep the area as right as it can be. And so I hope that the users of the OHV area become our absolute stewards, right? That they're the ones helping to police it. They're the ones when they see somebody going on a trail that they're not supposed to, that they're educating them. You know, don't harass them because I don't want you to get hurt or anything, but that you help educate. Say, hey, you're going the wrong way, or here's the right map, or here's the right thing. But to recognize that this is the area that we are dedicating to OHV. It does not mean that as time goes on and things happen, it doesn't mean you never close down a trail or open something else up, right? But I just wanted to go on the record to say, I think the fact of how much work Carson City's open space, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department and the user groups have done in that area is so spectacular in comparison to the wide open that we had there. And so I want to acknowledge all of the individuals that also send us the comments, you know, because they're striving for perfection. And I'm never going to argue with that either, right? I'm not, because we all want perfection, but again, it's a wheel that's turning and you're looking for the proper balance. So I appreciate you talking about that with us and why the plan is, this is the way it is there. So Supervisor White and then Jim.
I think part of the problem out there is some confusion, misunderstanding in regards to what is policy and what is apparent practice. And part of that confusion comes from, for instance, in the OHV management plan, which is Appendix K in this agenda item, on page 16 at number D, the definitions. Definition D is open area. Cross-country travel is permitted and OHVs are not restricted to designated routes. I know there's areas out there that encompass people basically ride around in circles and go wherever they want. But generally, the way it's signed, it appears that it's appropriate to just head off out through the sagebrush at any given time you feel like. We know that's not appropriate, but that's what I'm talking about, the confusion. What is the policy and what is the apparent practice on the ground? They have to come in line with better signage and better education.
So if I can understand correctly, did you see that we need to make a correction in here? That it's not distinct enough?
Well,
or that this is, and you think signage or other mapping would take care of your concern?
For instance, with this definition D, off the trailers, it's in the appendix. It's not in the printed.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You have to
The link.
clickety-clack into the ether to find this.
Okay.
For
Okay.
instance, in off the trailers, that's generally open area. But there's an island of sagebrush there within this open area.
Right.
That's where
You don't want
a
them
lot
parked
of
in the-
confusion is, and you can see where people have just taken off out through the sagebrush. So there has to be a better alignment of the policies, the definitions, and the actual apparent practice. We've talked, we know it's not appropriate, but somebody comes from out of the area that hasn't had a 2-hour sit-down with Lindsay and Greg, they don't know that.
Okay. Supervisor Giomi.
Well, and I think, the plan sort of touches on that in that you do address signage, and I think, I don't think the plan is silent relative to that. I think it's like any plan, it's a matter of prioritizing and funding and getting it, getting the time to do it. I largely agree with what everyone has said so far. I think we're charged with creating access and balancing that access for all of the users. And frankly, given the way that has historically been in my nearly 50 years here, it was. I mean, you think back 50 years ago to the use out there, and it was. The collective you in Parks and Rec have done a fantastic job since acquiring this land to pin it down. And maybe, there are instances where you talk about land management and Robin mentioned 2 washes and, maybe 1 year you close a wash or 2 years you close a wash and open another one. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think you guys can manage it at your level and should manage. I do want to talk a little bit about sediment runoff and Golden Eagle Lane because we've heard that for a long time. And I just wondered if we've made any headway with the state on access. Does anyone, Jen, Greg, Nancy, Lindsay, anyone have any updates? I know the mayor and I met with the governor and his staff and talked a little bit about that and tried to, I know one of the issues we've run into is the state not granting us permission to do work, which we believe we can do. So that's, I mean, I know that's outside the plan, but it's related to everything going on in that area. And I think it's critical to OHV use on that hill.
Sure. Lindsay Boyer for the record. So regarding Golden Eagle Lane, we recognize that there are sediment impacts happening to Golden Eagle Lane. There are also portions of Golden Eagle Lane that we, the city, own and have the ability to clean up that sediment and address significant erosion. There was head cutting along the side of the road earlier this year. Our staff went in and repaired that right away. So we are able to be responsive with our portions of the road. But it does cross multiple jurisdictions, including the state, as you alluded to. So we have been working on that with the state. We submitted a right of entry agreement to the state that would allow us to go into their portions of the property and clean up sediment. There was some delay in getting that information back or that authorization back. And then ultimately the authorization that we received back from them included some terms that the city wasn't comfortable taking on. So we're kind of in a going back and forth process with what language we're
Is this
willing to
recent
accommodate.
discussions?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and give an update because I did speak with the director that the agreement that was provided did not match the meeting that we had. And it's my understanding we're going to get a revised agreement to meet because all we really want is a right of entry just for the public to understand. And Mr. Bentel that was here earlier, again, for the public to understand, I do not have the right to trespass on someone else's property. I simply do not. But the property owners can give the city the right to go on the property and help do maintenance
Well,
if they choose to.
Yeah, they could also do the maintenance themselves.
They
which They
could.
clearly
They're not.
are not going to do.
They're not going to do. And I wish that the state maintained all of their properties and would do the work. I mean, I hate for the Carson City residents to have that burden, but we want to address the issue. So I appreciate what Mr. Bentel is indicating. But it's my understanding we're going to get the revised right of entry that will simply do as the city asked and just give us the right to go on there and clean the culvert. That's the whole issue. But I don't, for all the rest of the board and the public, what we don't want is it to become a city responsibility and expenditure, which is they wanted to put some teeth into it. You know, I'm like, wait a second. You haven't done it for, I don't know, 50 years. So we want to go in when appropriate and be able to help clean that up and meet the needs out there. So
I think that, and I guess my comment relative to that is that, to me, it's part and parcel to having the OHV area. I don't think we can separate the maintenance of that from this OHV area. So that would be a comment where I'd like to see, put in the plan where, maybe not taking full responsibility for state land, but talking about coordinating with other governmental agencies. And I don't want it not mentioned because it's such a contentious point that, that we know using some of that land is going to create sediment. And to one of the testimonies today, we've got, this winter was hard. It was hard on dirt, it was hard on dirt roads, and it was hard on paved roads. I mean, you only have to drive around a few places in town. I happened to be going down to the Bay Area here a couple of weeks ago and took Pioneer Trail at Lake Tahoe. I will not. There are Grand Canyons on that road. So anyway, thank you for that. Overall, I know you're not done, but overall, I think the city has done a good job to balance the needs, and I think this plan continues that, particularly in this OHV area.
okay, keep on going. Like I said, we got the big chunk out of the way.
Yeah, that was good discussion. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Okay, additional chapters talk about environmental considerations like fuels management, invasive species management, erosion and sedimentation, flora and fauna, visual impacts, and monitoring. There's a chapter on event guidelines, and that was written to be broad enough to enable our department the flexibility to monitor and evaluate each event for impacts and issues and use that information to guide future event planning. And there's a chapter on signage and
Can we go back on the event planning and I'd like to have a broad discussion on event planning and guidelines and fees and things of that nature. Is this one, I'm just talking out loud for us to consider on event guidelines. Do we want fees for this particular area, like we did the rifle range, things that have extensive need for maintenance and things like that? Do we want to consider that if there are events out there that we're charging a fee, that we put that money back into this area? Yeah, I just want it on the record. It's about maintaining all of this and keeping it going.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. All the revenues from any open space properties that we already charged goes back into the open space fund.
Yeah, I just want it on the record so that people understand that we're not taking these fees and putting them to the general fund. That's what I'm trying to get on the
Absolutely.
record.
That is
so that,
correct.
right, we charge a fee, but that fee is, like you said, just improving our open space programs.
And the
So I
fees
just
that
wanted
we
it on the
charge is
record.
already part of our fees and charges schedule that you approved. But yes, those revenues do go back into the open space fund.
Perfect. Again, I think it's important that that's how we can do any maintenance that it's hard, costs a lot of money, and we're always having to pick like everyone else, right? Supervisor Schutte?
Thank you. Since we're talking about events right now, can you speak, one of the letters mentioned that an event, it was taking place outside of the boundary. And I know that in the master plan, it was talking about how exceptions can be made. Are you familiar with the letter I'm talking? Can you speak to that a little bit, or just so that there's clarification on events, how they're run or determined, what's appropriate, what isn't? Thank you.
So typically for events, the process that we follow is someone will reach out to us regarding an interest in having an event. We'll go through kind of the basics. We have them fill out an application, give them information about the fee schedule and that whole piece. Then typically we do a walkthrough with those individuals, or we'll get maps from where their routes are going to be, things like that, so we can vet the areas that they're looking at working. So we had a trials event over the weekend. It was the second year that we had that trials event. They were out there using that same course previously. So this year they made a mistake and they put their area kind of right on the boundary. So that was something that we were glad that was brought to our attention. And in the future, going back to what Greg said about evaluating each event for its merits and its issues and trying to fix that in the future, we know that we need to really increase how much we go over the maps and the boundary areas with them so that they make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Thank you.
Well, and I think when you have an event like that is sort of outside the parameters, it probably ought to have someone from Parks and Rec, whether it be a ranger or one of your staff, dropping in on that to make sure that, that isn't happening, so that we're, protecting the neighboring residents and those kinds of things,
All right. Okay, keep going.
The last chapter addresses actions, guidelines, and implementation. And that's divided into 4 different categories. Projects short-term, which are projects that are currently either funded or may be funded within the normal operating budget. And those are projects that would be, within 5 years or less. Projects long-term are projects that require future funding or additional research and planning, or maybe awaiting opportunities. Guidelines for management are routine management practices. And then guidelines for planning, which are principles of practices that should be considered when planning and implementing projects on Prison Hill. And I want to mention a couple of other corrections that we're going to make. Supervisor White noted an error in Appendix M, and that's been updated. And also he noted on page 41, section 6.1, referred to the west side of Prison Hill. It should be the east side, and so that correction will be made in the final copy. And then Mayor Bagwell asked on page 39 that the word illicit be struck from line number 10, so we've done that, or will do that. And that's what I've got. So I guess with that, I will open it up to any questions that the board may have.
So just in general, one of the items for me, this is a great plan, and I think we've been talking about this throughout lately, is using proper definitions and terms and things for education and how difficult it is. And so I think when we go out to do our master plan later, that we can at that time take an opportunity to determine if we need to clean up titles and language. So it says it's the master plan for Prison Hill, but master plans by law pursuant have to go to the Planning Commission. And so what I'm indicating is we will capture these and put them properly. Maybe it's an implementing plan underneath the master plan for parks, recreation, and open space. So I don't want to deal with that today, but I want to just put it on the record that we may slightly relabel and reference all these documents that we have when we do the master plan. Because I think it's important for the public. Again, it's hard to explain the difference between them. So I've asked legal, when we get through the master plan components, to determine how these either become implementing guides and appendixes, or what the right wording and stuff is. So that's again, just putting it out on the record that we might get technical name changes for our documents to align with state law. So, great job. I know it's a lot of work, but great job. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, relative to that, I think the master plan that we're going to work on, which is a master plan relative to land use planning, probably, in my opinion, I have to give it some thought, shouldn't reference these. I don't think these have to hang off that master plan. I think that master plan is very clearly a responsibility of us under NRS to do land use planning. And
But it has to
I'm
pass the right
agreeing
page.
with you
Right.
that the word master plan, we don't have to address now, but
Right.
maybe we just use the term strategic plan
Right.
or expand, whatever the case may
Whatever.
be. I don't necessarily agree that has to hang off the master plan because I don't know that this really deals with land use planning. So just a couple of comments, and I think you kind of addressed them. You addressed the CCMC issue. There's some references in here sort of that imply that this plan deals with land use planning, and I think you have to go through and maybe kind of soften that because
Right.
that's not, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be in there. You shouldn't be talking about land use planning. That is clearly a responsibility of county government. So you could say make recommendations on use of the land to the Board of Supervisors or something like that, just broadly. And just, I know we're sort of wrapping up the discussion on this, but I just, over the last 2 or 3 years, even less than that, we've done a Fuji Park master plan, this master plan, strategic plan, whatever we're calling them.
Right.
Fuji Park, Mills Park, am I missing anything? Centennial Park we're working on now. And I couldn't be happier. I applaud you and the team, the commission, your staff. This positions Carson City to be able to take advantage of grants because we have a finished, approved, signed off, public input document that's gone through all the legwork that needs to be gone through to be able to apply for money that other local governments are going to struggle to do because they don't have the wherewithal to have done what you all accomplished. So kudos to you.
Mhm. Great job. Okay, I don't see anything else. I will open this for public comment. If you've already made public comment on this item in the beginning and don't have new information, I would appreciate that you don't come up and repeat. But if you have any public comment on this item, Mark, Mr. Kimbrough?
Yeah, my name is Mark Kimbrough. I'm actually the chair of the open space, but I'm not wearing that hat today. But I came because this subject matter has been heavy on our public comments for a couple of years now. So I wanted to speak to a few of those items in there. And I appreciate the passion and the hard work that these items have come from. But I want to start back in the 1900s, as I tell people. When John Singlob and I and Juan Guzman went for a road trip before the sewer saddle was bought, and the vision of all that, with BLM being agreeable to that and understanding it's in the middle of a community. So it started back then that this dream of all of these properties become exactly what this plan was today. It's taken since the 1900s, and here we are today. So I've actually done a couple of OHV plans for BLM, one up out of Battle Mountain and then one out of Panaca area. And they did nowhere near the amount of planning, not even close to the amount of planning that's done here. This community, as you said, needs accolades for understanding the need for plans in this community on all these levels. So they have done an outstanding job and brought the right people in, and we had the money from the people who voted for open space to support the planning with other people other than the staff. Way out there for that. And I wanted to say that those areas actually use these areas of concern, these ephemeral streams, as part of their plan because they wash out every year. So you wouldn't even know anybody was in it the year before because it's all gone. And then I want to tell you, I lived out at Mexican Dam for 22 years. And every water event put mud, that sediment across the roadway out where Sierra Vista has been paved now since then. It was all dirt. And I remember when I was on the Carson River Board, that Kay was a leader in to get established. A gentleman came in, a geologist, and said that all those grounds up above there in Prison Hill have soil types, and they use the word liquefaction. You get a rainstorm or a water event, it just turns to liquid and moves down the mountain. So the OHV use isn't the one that's causing all of it as much as just natural runoff that occurs every year anyway. We were doing maintenance on the road constantly. Every time there was a water event. So it's part of that environment, and BLM handed it to the city saying, okay, we're giving you this, but this is going to be OHV. So they've done everything you possibly could to make that happen. And then I wanted to tell you that this group in Europe that works with your staff here just were given an international award for his work with muscle powered. Greg, but I give accolades to Lindsay and Jen too, because the leadership in that group internationally were recognized for the work that they do in this community, or a template for the nation of the work they're doing in cooperation with these different groups. So this OHV plan is a template again. They've used all these people and to bring this plan together so that it can go to other communities and say, how do you get this done? So you're always going to have people that don't agree with that and understand that they do damage, but they have it all lined up to do the maintenance, to be there, to make sure the road's open, and to make sure these facilities are run properly. So I really want to make sure they get the credit for all this hard work to put us to this point, and to understand that, yes, there will be problems, but there was problems on those roads long before the OHVs were there. So it's just part of the natural environment out there. So I thank you for that chance, and to give this credit for this International Award of Trails Conference with over 900 people from all over the world said these guys are doing it right. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for what you've done for this community.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Ron?
Ron Moe, citizen. I definitely agree with what Mark says about the liquefaction of the soils there. The soils are sand. And just like the director of the project, Mark Hildesheim, in the first working group mentions this is going to be tough, talking about the project. There is no clay. The whole thing is what holds things together up there is vegetation. And talked a little bit about enforcement of sound, spark control. There's no enforcement of people staying on the trails, designated trails, whatever. And it's this, there's a percentage of the OHVers that go off trail. And I tell you, it kills the vegetation. So you can walk up there, hike up there, whatever, and you can look around and see, here's a line of dead vegetation. That's from an OHVer going through there. So anyway, the increase of open area, all that erosion, we need the vegetation up there. And when it gets killed off, it takes a long time. Take a look at the first burn area up there northeast of Golden Eagle Rock. I just went up, I don't know, a few days ago, and I saw there was one little bush starting from this burned area. Maybe little grasses and little things, but there isn't sagebrush or bitterbrush or desert peach. It's, that fire was 4 years ago, come this next month. And it's not good. It's, certain things, there needs to be some enforcement, and just like to the east of the staging, there was a fire there 2 years ago. That needs to be cut off. And it's somehow, some of us speak to our open space committee, and there's a lot of turnover. A lot of those people, most of them haven't been up there to see. And sometimes maybe they'll go with somebody that is biased to one side on how great it is, this is what you end up seeing. Anyway, there's other areas that
Thank
need
you
to be
so much.
explained.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do I have any more? Ms. Orloff? Nope, turn it back on. He left it on for you. There you go.
Robin Orloff. I find it difficult to just speak after everything's done. It's more easier for me just to have a conversation. And I think part of the issues that are going on with this project is we are sending emails and asking for a conversation, and maybe a conversation on the site so that we could resolve some of these issues and finally understand one another. I appreciate the Open Space Advisory Committee, but we have asked them to go out on site visits, and most of those people have not seen the area other than what you see at a ribbon cutting, the main roads. I think you have to get into the heart of it to understand and make decisions, and talk about it on the ground. Regarding the comment I sent in about the event, the trials guys are awesome, and I encouraged the open space even to go out and view them. They defy gravity there, and they took really good care of the property. And I don't think it was their fault that they were out of bounds. I think the open area signs are a little confusing. You face them, they say open area boundary, but the boundary is there in front of the sign, not in back. So I just wish that when I sent that comment in, that somebody from open space, a representative, might have gone out to look at it, to document it, not to move them at that point. It was probably too late. And what I would do is like, okay, fine, we're going to go in, I'll go in if you'll let me, and rake the tracks so that the trespass does not continue. The trespass was beyond the open area. It's easy. You could go in and you just rake the evidence so people don't follow those tracks. So that's a positive thing that I would hope would happen. And regarding my concerns about the West Basin, there are so many areas that can be opened, like Gunslinger. Upper Gunslinger's closed, but the rock crawlers love the big rock outcropping up there, and they use it anyway. So maybe you give them that, and then you take away some of the other area that might be more impacted and not as balanced. I think even the east boundary, you could add, let people go out to the viewpoint because they love it. Give a little when you have to take a little so that you keep the balance. But I think conversation is important. And and I know we've talked about it before, but we haven't discussed it on the ground, on site. And in fact, when you went out on something I'd been talking about for 2 years that I was concerned about, the designation was changed from 2-track to 1-track, and one area was taken off the map. So when people look at it, you see, maybe this isn't working. And I really appreciated that. And I think that more of that might be able to be done.
Thank you. Do I have any other comment? Okay, I'll bring it back up here for a motion then. Supervisor Giomi.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I move to approve the Prison Hill Master Plan as presented with the discussion from the board members that has been placed on the record here today.
And
Second.
staff.
And staff.
And staff, thank you.
Thank you. Discussion, yeah, board members and staff. Thank you.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. And again, thank you all, everybody, including the community. It takes everybody to make these things work. So, great job. Okay, we're now on to agenda item number 13, which is our non-action items. Ms. Paulson, do you have any updates?
Just at the next meeting, May 18th, will be the final budget presentation, and we will also have CDBG and the CSSG funding items on that date.
Okay. I just want to give a shout out. It is National Small Business Week. So I just want to give a shout out to all the small businesses in Carson City. I think it's the heartbeat, right? Well, we need the big box stores or the car dealers and all of that for our sales tax base, but a huge employment base is all of our small businesses. So I just want to remind everyone, if you see a small business owner, give them a pat on the back and tell them thank you for all their work to help make Carson City what it is. Anybody else?
Can I-
Supervisor Schutte?
Can I build on what you just said? I agree
Absolutely.
100%. And what's so interesting, and I think this was in Happy Cities, an amazing book, but really talking about the impact of small business for the square footage and for the people who are employed, it actually brings in more bang for the buck. It is less impactful on the environment. It is more community friendly, and not to discount the need and the importance of large box stores, but small business really is integral to a healthy, vibrant, joyful community. So just wanted to add that.
Perfect. I don't see anybody else have anything under this? Nope. We will have a closed meeting immediately upon adjournment. Do we have any final, they all left me. We have one left. Is there any final public comment? No? No one? Okay, seeing none, then then we are adjourned, and we'll come back in just